I think this is one of the most important things in our life that we are ignoring or we are not being aware of, and that is our traumatic experiences. Traumatic. I, I don't know if I wrote that right, but traumatic, and we all have traumatic experiences. This is not. I'm not talking about like our traumatic, like you get in fights with other friends. I'm talking about when we were children, and these things might not even be that big. They might just be like we we were crying for an hour because mommy and daddy was on the phone, and for some reason we now have that in us that we are not going to be safe, and we have to find out the solutions to ourselves, or we have to find out our own safety, or we can never let anyone come close to us. And I think that when I was in therapy school, my name is Dan. I was in therapy school. I have dealt with anxiety, depression, addiction. I've been to rehab. I've owned multiple $1 million businesses. And I've been through a lot of different experiences. And let me tell you, is that all of them came down to the traumatic experiences when I was young. And I think all of us are walking around this earth and we are pretending that we will, well, not pretending, but we are unaware that we are these people who are filled with traumatic experiences that we have never ever healed. And it's crazy to think that we have something that happened to us that we it wasn't abusive. It doesn't mean that we were beaten or struck, but we had some emotional, like we cried, we felt insecure, and one of our needs weren't being met, and just for a specific period of time. And for instance, I remember that my father said he was going to pick me up at a certain time. My father was a really a-hole, so this is just like he gaslighted, like complete narcissist. So this is not, most parents, they try their hardest, and I think because we have parents and they don't know, they can't be there always the best. They try their hardest. And but he left me there, my father, besides the point, he left me, and for I was playing soccer, and he said, oh, I'll pick you up at 5, and he did not show up, and I waited there for hours, and then I called, and this was before cell phones, so I figured out, I think I got a parent to call, and he said, I never said I was going to pick him up, and he was off on a date or something. And I remember that it was just like, I learned intuitively, it just like, it was, as a child, you're not like processing this information and being like, oh, okay, he's just a POS, like forget him, like whatever. You start to internalize it, and you internalize it that maybe you weren't good enough, or you can't trust yourself, and you aren't capable of making your own decisions. And so I didn't realize that that was what I had been doing, and my basically through my 20s into my 30s, I had been doing that. And it was like, how crazy that my life has been, basically all my choices and all the things that I have been doing and all the dates that I've gone on, the girls that I've chosen to date, and the professions that I've tried and businesses that I've built, and everything was built upon these micro traumatic experiences. It's they call micro traumas. And some of them were more worse, were actual real traumas, but people think trauma like someone being beaten. But emotional trauma is very, 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 I think it goes deeper, because the physical, I'm not saying physical trauma is bad, but physical, we know someone's hitting us, we feel it, but with the emotional, it's like we have to kind of try to figure out how to heal that information, like how to heal that inside of us, and where is that going? Because if we can't express it, and if we can't try to figure out and explain it and try to work through it, then we're going to hold on to it for the rest of our lives. And basically that's what we're doing. And so what I wanted to say about these traumatic experiences is that, why do we end up in toxic relationships? right? We end up in toxic relationships. And I think because we're used to it. So you end up with a boyfriend that is never there for you, or he gives you love at first, he love bombs you, and then he disappears. And you're used to it because maybe your father did that or your mother did that. And you choose people based off of things from when you were 5 years old. You choose people based off of all the experiences that you had when you were that young. And I think that it's so crazy that we don't realize that we have these traumas, and a lot of them, they're unconscious, like we don't even remember them, and our day-to-day lives are being dictated by that. And so then we choose all these toxic people, and you may not be that person, but you might see someone, a girl or a guy, and you're like, why is he with that person? Like, they treat them so bad, yet they stay with them, and they'll do anything for them. It's because they're used to that toxic. And for some person to come around and be nice and be untoxic and have everything together is like scary for them. They don't really understand it because they don't have a really good self-esteem, right? Their self-esteem about themselves is very low because they were taught as a young age that like they had to figure it out that they weren't worthy of anyone. And I'm telling you that everyone is worthy of anything. And our parents, they tried their best, and everyone has traumatic experience. And if you ever like, you always think that other families, like they got their stuff together, and then you realize like every family is like messed up in some way or another, and every family has like problems, and then there's like every family has sisters like that don't talk to each other and brothers and stuff, and then you realize like, how does that happen? Like, these are grown adults and everyone's still not talking to each other, you know? It's because they never got over these traumatic experiences and they never learned to communicate. Because, why? Because communication is vulnerable. Communication brings out a lot of vulnerability. And I'm a huge component on communication. Whenever I was little, I would always be like, Daddy, why didn't you take me fishing? Daddy, why didn't you pick me up? Why aren't you like the other dads? Why aren't you like, and I just learned to communicate my feelings. And I would say, I feel this because of this. I feel this because of this. That was just who I was. And he would say, oh, he's just too sensitive. He's just too this and this. And so I learned to grow up thinking that like I was somehow messed up. Like maybe my brain was messed up, or maybe I had mental issues, or like I was just spiritually I was broken. And I still have that feeling today because I don't think you can't ever really heal those wounds completely. I think you learn to heal them to a point where you learn that to be aware of them, because you're always going to have those thoughts that I'm not good enough, because I was always told I was never good enough. And so I have thoughts that I can't complete this, can't do this, I'm never going to be able to be what I want to be. And I have to be aware of that, because I can't change the past, and I cannot change who my parents are, and I cannot change what has happened to me. But I take the actual negative of it, of being treated so poorly by a father, because I think having no father as a young guy, a young boy, is very important, I think, and maybe it is for a girl and her mother. But luckily I had a mom who tried her best, but she still she didn't understand a masculine role model. She tried her best, and luckily, I mean, if it wasn't for her, I would definitely be in jail or on the streets, probably begging for money, or maybe screaming like in the air, talking to someone. Like, so I at least had one person in my life so that my whole life wasn't just toxic, because I had so much trauma. And I know we all have this trauma. And so we have to learn that we have this trauma. One is just being okay with it. Because a lot of people, they're saying like, no, I don't have any trauma, like my childhood's good. And even if they are aware of it, it's like they don't want to do the work to progress. And the thing is we're always going to be stuck in this element of being in this low vibration, because this trauma is still dictating everything we do, everything we say, all the actions we do, and we are unaware of it. We think we like these type of guys and these type of girls, and this is what we like to do. We build our identity around the toxic relationship that we had, or the traumas that we have. We build our identity. And if you think that, that to me sounds so crazy, because if I were to have a dad that were to say, son, you can do it, and I love you so much, and he would always say I love you, and he was just there for me, like, I would be such a different person. I would believe differently. I would be aware of everything, and I would never had to struggle to figure out, to find myself. And I mean, I'm glad that I did not have that, because those struggles and all the things that I went through made me much stronger. So in hindsight, yes, but I would have rather had a father that would have been there for me and been proud of me and been all these things like you see like a typical son and a father have. But I also hear the reverse for women, like girls and their moms are horrible women, like horrible mothers. And it is what it is. We can't choose our parents. But the trauma that sticks with us is like, you have to let it go. I remember I had a therapist, this was about 10 years ago, and he told me, and I was trying so hard for him to be like a father to me. And I was still like 23, still trying, because I just needed that. I needed a father figure in my life, because it was like my life was just like, I could not figure out, I didn't know how to change a tire, I didn't know how to do this, I was getting into drugs, I was like, couldn't be, like everything was just chaos. And he told me, you need to learn to let him die. And he said, until he dies in you, like until you're okay with him dying, you will never live a healthy life. And then I remember that, because I was like, wow, I have to let him die. And that was very, very hard, because I wanted that father so bad. So I learned to let him die. And then a lot of the traumatic experiences kind of healed for me, because I learned that I was fixated on trying to get these things that I wasn't able to get, and I would never get, because that was just who he was, and because of his past traumas. And there's this book called The Shame That Binds Us that talks about generational trauma and how it keeps getting passed on and on and on and on and on, and eventually someone has to take the trauma and say, hey, okay, I'll deal with the freaking trauma. Like, I'm strong enough. I have the courage and I have the inspiration and the motivation to take this on, because it's toxic. But I don't want to pass this to my children, because I don't want my children to be like that. And my mother was that way. She had very bad parents, came from a household of 8 kids, and they all called her like different, called her everyone. They were like so mean to the children, but she said, I never want to treat my children like that. So she made it her responsibility to do whatever she could so that I could live a life that was not like what she lived. And then, but who does she end up marrying? She ends up marrying someone who is toxic, which is funny, because my mom never drinks, never smokes, never does any drugs, never depressed, is like always happy, always positive, and she ends up marrying the most unhappy, like unpositive guy, like the most toxic person in the entire world. I can't even explain. And she married him. Like, they went to Las Vegas and got married. Like, this is a woman who was just so like a library, like imagine like a library nerd who just like read during classroom, who had no friends because she just read, and she ends up marrying this douchebag guy who thinks he's like the like shit, and he is toxic as heck. And you understand, like, why do you do that? Because she was used to it. And she said she had love letters from doctors saying, I love you and you're so beautiful. Because my mom, she was a good looking young lady. I mean, you could tell where I get my looks. And that was a joke, by the way. And you could see she ended up doing the toxic route. And it was so funny because I'm like, why didn't you go for the doctor guy? She's like, because it was made me sick. Like, he was love letters and flowers and you're just like, because she was not used to that. She was used to a guy coming home and never even saying hi to her and never even saying I love you and never doing any of those things. So that's why we are attracted to those toxic relationships. But if she had ever dealt with the trauma that she had with her parents and realized that like they messed up and whatever, screwed them, let them go, because she didn't care when they passed away because she had no relationship with them. But she made sure that her children were like not anything like her parents or my father, who she ends up marrying, which is crazy. But it's like we don't even consciously know why we are attracted to that. And I think that is just so unique in a way, because we think that we are in charge of everything that we do. We think that we are fully in charge. I like this guy because he does this and this, this and this, and he is so confident and all this and this, but he is toxic, right? And then the girl calls the guy up and you're like, why is she with this guy? And because she feels comfortable. She feels like this feels like a place that she belongs, that she's nestled in her comfort zone. And so we have to do these things to get out of this toxic relationship. We have to get out of that, or else and most of these people that have this, that they go after these toxic people, they have really, really low self-esteem. Naturally, they do. And my mom, I think she had low self-esteem about herself because her dad was not there for her mom was not there for her. So she had very low self-esteem about herself. And she also did not communicate very well. And so she just ended up, she could have chosen great guys, men that were just that had their stuff together, that did not have a lot of traumatic experiences, but she chose the guy that was the worst, the one that would cry to her, come back to her after he would not talk to her or anything, and then say, take me back, baby, please. And then she'd take him back, and then he would just like go run away and play tennis and not do anything. And then she's like, I'm done. And so he goes, okay, fine. If you're done, let's go to Las Vegas and I'll put I'll put a ring on your finger and we'll get married. And it was like, what? So I don't even know why he even had children, because that was not even part of his plan. So, but we have to communicate. And then the thing is, when we communicate, then we get these unhidden parts of us, like inside our head, that like part of our brain, that what these traumatic experiences did for us, and that what they're dictating us. And it's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to be like, oh yeah, my dad treated me like this. Okay, boom, we're done. It's like, okay, why we got to keep focusing on this area of your dad. We got to keep focusing in this area on your mom. And what does she make you feel? How does she make you feel? What are the things that she does that is keeping you from finding the guy of your dreams or whatever? What do you think that is in you, because you're carrying over stuff that you brought from her? And what do you think that is maybe pushing away guys? Because maybe you're meeting girls or guys, and maybe you're just pushing away. And I know that I've met some very good girls And it's funny is that the like they have no reason why, they just find reasons to push me away. And same with me. I mean, same with me. I've met some good girls and that I'm like, the nice ones, they're very, very sweet, and then I push them away. And then I end up with these toxic ones that I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm like attracted to that. And I know we are attracted to like what we can't have, we want, right? But I think there's a part of that we need to, if we want to build a relationship with someone, we have to communicate. And it all starts with trying to understand like how you feel. And a lot of people, we don't understand how we feel. That's why like journaling is so important, because we have to journal how we feel, like how we feel about someone. Why do I not like this person? And it's not because he's wearing a fedora, and I only like date guys that wear cowboy hats, and I only date guys that like don't wear short shorts. Those things don't matter. Like those, like, and when girls have, and guys, same thing, when they have like 20 red flags, it's like the red flags should be only like if the guy is like a, I don't know, treats everyone poorly, like just simple things that is just common. Like if a guy is treating a waiter, yelling and screaming at a waiter, like of course, like you don't want to date that guy. But a red flag is not someone that wears a hat. And when I lived in LA, that was all I experienced, was people had these red flags of what people like guys shouldn't wear, and that has no bearing on what someone's, who they are as a person, what their spirit is like. So I just wanted to think about this because I had, when I was in therapy school, we talked a lot about traumatic experiences, and there was a lot of people that had a lot of trauma, like real bad trauma. And I don't want to go there, but you could tell that their life was just a mess. And you could tell that like why they are on the street is because of the trauma they had. They experienced way worse trauma. So I guess I got lucky that I had a great mother, because some people don't have either or. So if you didn't have a father, or if you didn't have a mother, but if you had one, then that's great. If you hadn't either, then I think you need a lot of work to be done in order for you to grow, because eventually you're just going to keep becoming the same person, and you're going to be unaware of what these traumatic experiences are dictating your life. And they're dictating your life from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. And then the interactions that you make, everything that you do with work, everything that you do with your life, and anything that you want to accomplish in your dreams, if you don't get past these mental blocks of like what's toxic in your life, you're never gonna feel whole, because there's always gonna be like a weight being dragging you down. And I had to go through a lot of therapy as like a mid-20s, to realize that my father had created such a traumatic experience for me. But he didn't, not for my brothers, it wasn't as bad, but for me, I was like the middle child. I was the black sheep. So I was the one that he called out, because he wanted to make sure that he made an example of me. But I understand that now, and I do not give him any power, but I know that today he still affects my self-esteem. He still affects my day-to-day life, but I am much more aware, and I communicate to whoever I'm talking to, whoever I need to talk to, and I'm constantly on this path of growth, because it's always going to be there, whether we like it or not. We're growing and communicating with this trauma, because it's going to be there for the rest of our life. But whether it takes a hold of you or whether it doesn't, that's up to you. So let me know if you've had traumas in your life. If you had, you don't have to leave your name, whatever. I know, like, because some people have had some really bad childhoods. If any of this rings a bell to you, if any of this like resonates with you, leave a comment, because I just like to see, like, I know there's people out there that have had these experiences. So hit subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.